O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.
The Hunting Collective is presented by Element.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien and I'm sitting in by a creek in the Missouri Breaks with Clay Newcomb. Hey Clay.
Hey Ben.
How's it going?
It's going well. Fair.
Fair to middling?
Fair.
Fair to middling.
We're not sitting on a cactus, which I just had to make sure I wasn't.
I got to tell you, the other day I sat down. We were looking for elk, and I sat down in the spot where we thought there might be elk, and I looked right. I'm going to say about 2 inches from my sack was the cactus.
Yeah.
I mean, I was close to
There's a lot of cactus out here.
Your camera guy, Colby, so he's not really a camera guy. How would you describe Colby?
Colby is, he's the bear tech for Bear Hunting Magazine.
Okay, that's a good time.
He's just my main sidekick.
Yeah, and your main sidekick is here with us, and I think he looked down first and saw the cactus kind of sidling up to my testicles and alerted me, thank God. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
But do you want to describe this country to people that we're in right now?
Well, so we're elk hunting, public land elk hunt in, we'll just say the Missouri Breaks.
Yeah. We're not going to drop you a waypoint.
No. You know, this is a distressed landscape. It really is. It appeared, I really don't know the geology of this place, but it appears that at one time it was a flat or a plain, and then some just over time eroded these big deep draws. It almost looks like South Dakota Badlands type ground. A lot of fully exposed, just like soft, soft rock. Mm-hmm. But there's finger ridges that are covered in pine trees that give quite a bit of cover for the elk. But I would say that there's probably like 40%, maybe 30% tree cover. The rest is open country, rocky, rough, distressed.
Rocky, rough. A few cottonwoods down at the bottom. Mostly evergreens up on top. It kind of feels like there's pockets of what you would think of as elk country.
Right.
Like there's little spaces, islands of like, oh, that looks good. And then amidst the sea of just endless buttes and, stone cliffs. And so this has been country I've wanted to hunt in for some time. Having read stories about it, having, known about this area. If I check my Onyx, I'm pretty sure we're sitting on National Monument ground right now.
It's beautiful country, no doubt.
No doubt. Is it like you thought it would be? I mean, how much did you think about it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's It's about what I thought it would be. It's probably harder than I thought to get on elk. Not to see elk, but that's what everybody told me. They said you'll see elk, they'll be hard to kill.
Yep.
And that's been exactly true.
Yeah.
As we have seen a lot of elk, but just because you see them and you hear them bugling, you might be. Well, it's not even getting on them; it's that they're moving.
Yeah,
they move so much. These elk just don't stay. You can't just put one to bed and then come back the next day and it'd be in the same place for the most part.
This country can be Montana, especially elk country, can be intimidating. But this country kind of isn't as intimidating as some of the stuff I've hiked around before. It has a gentleness to it in terms of how you can navigate it, and I think that certainly helps us. But that helps the elk too, because they can move pretty quickly.
Yeah, we're not dealing with high elevations. I think the highest elevations here are in the 3,000s.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so I'm like you. When you're walking around this, I feel poor that I didn't read about the geology here of the landscape, but I will when I get back and really study up on what I'm seeing here in terms of how this landscape came to be and some of the more interesting elements it has. But we're sitting here down by a creek in the bottom. We hiked down here this morning, and just by the by, we might have to go there. We heard a couple of about 500 yards across. We've heard a couple of bugles in the last half hour. So if you hear the headsets drop onto the ground, and some shuffling,
hang tight till we get back.
We'll be back.
Might be like an hour-long pause.
Yeah,
nothing.
It'll be an interstitial. We'll put some music in there. Maybe we'll just put some ocean sound so you can really meditate your way into what might happen for us. But we're towards the tail end of our hunt, and we might have an afternoon, maybe tomorrow. You're probably listening to this on Tuesday. It's Monday. It's 9 a.m. So we're recording it real time, basically, out here. So we should tell the story of this morning's hunt. I think that this morning's hunt, the last couple of hours we've had, has very much been, emblematic of the challenge here in general, and the fact that there are giant elk everywhere, or everywhere being a term I don't use lightly because they're around for sure. So you want to kick us off?
So the temperatures this morning were in the high 40s and 0 wind. Yesterday it was very windy. It was kind of a bust yesterday. Aside from late in the evening, you were out on the south end of this mountain and heard a bull bugle down low, and basically you found an elk that you messed with until dark. Couldn't get him to come in. And so we were back there this morning. Weather kind of cleared out yesterday afternoon. So we heard elk right at daylight.
Yeah.
I mean, just like what you would want. We were up above them.
Well, yeah, just imagine if you the end of this ridge that we're on. Just imagine if you stretch your hand out, point it south, and if you look at your fingers, it's kind of what we were hunting. Yeah. We were up on the top of your hand where your knuckles are, and there are several finger ridges that you can travel down to intercept these elk that we come to find out, already in the bottom.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, so we try to course these elk. We hear them, and what we learned earlier in the week is that you can hear these elk from so far, or what I learned. You can hear these elk from a mile across the canyon. So, you try to discern, are these elk close or these elk far? Anyway, we heard what we felt like were elk that we could get on. We start moving down one of the finger ridges, peeking up over ledges, looking down, waiting for the elk to bugle. And he probably bugled 5 or 6, 7 times as we were moving down. And finally we laid eyes on him. We saw him, and he was down in the very bottom. We were probably 350 yards from him, maybe.
Yeah. There was other elk across from us. If you imagine that we've now walked down your pinky finger, kind of. We've now walked down the pinky finger. He's in between the pinky finger and your next finger over, down below us. And so and then I see him, and you described to me a bull you saw earlier in the week that had a club hanging down from, I can't remember the side that you described, but in this case, this elk had a club hanging down from the right side, kind of above his eye a little bit. Going down
a non-typical point that came off the base and hung about probably 9 to 12 inches off his head.
He's impressive. And he had 2 cows with him, and it was clear. We started bugling. And we'll do a little bugling for you later on, see what we can do. But we started bugling, and he was responding, and he was definitely responding to cow calls.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm like, well, the strategy here is going to try to challenge him and cut him off. So you were bugling, I was bugling, you were cutting him off. He was responding, he was fired up. But much like if you listened a couple episodes ago to Remy Warren talk about bulldogging, and you listen to Cutting the Distance that I work on with Remy, where we talk about bulldogging, there's this idea where you challenge a bull and he rounds his cows up and gets out of town.
Right.
And that's what this bull did. He bugled back at us, he turned, he postured, shifted a bit, and then ran down around, the tips of your fingers if you're still pointing your hand out there. I hope you're still holding your hand out. He's running down the tips of your fingers, down to the bottom towards the creek. Now, at this point, I knew from having talked to Remy and learned this strategy that if we could get in front of him, we had a real good chance that he would come stomping up to challenge us. Problem is, as we just said a little bit earlier, it's hard to get in front of an elk. And it's hard to get in front of these elk.
And what we didn't describe fully is that the creek bottom is just a vast open meadow.
It's a sage flat.
So once he started moving away from us, those cows they were basically trotting.
Yeah.
And it feels like once they decide that they're going to go across one of these flats,
there's no reason to dawdle.
Yeah, they move out quick.
Yeah, and so these elk, when we started going, we said we got to go, we got to run. So we ran up this ridge, and as we started to run, we could kind of see the elk moving below. There's some humps in the bottom of these fingers. You can kind of see it moving in the bottom as we're trying to get down. We picked basically your middle finger, and that's where we were going to go down and cut them off. And so we get on your middle finger, we're walking down, and we could kind of pick them off. And when I was picking them off, they were moving. Yeah, and I just knew there's no way we could be fast enough. I was like, there's just no. Halfway down, I knew it just wasn't going to be good. My only hope at that point was maybe we'll get a satellite bull, maybe some other bull will peel off this bigger bull. He's going to be pushing these cows, unless they stop to take a drink, which it does not look like they want to. Yeah. They're just going over the other side and get in safer territory, as is the the way they use this country, apparently, as we're learning through this time. So anyway, continue the story.
Well, so we side hill, we come down a really steep drainage, we go a bunch across a lot of stuff that looks like the surface of the moon, and basically when we finally pop out in between one of these ridges into this open flat, we see the elk had already crossed the creek and we're way on the other side, which is not a place that we can hunt. And so we were, probably 5 minutes behind them. And right where we popped out, there was, we saw where the whole herd had crossed the creek. And there were, it's hard to say how many cows, but quite a few cows. But it was an incredible bull. The first bull we saw was a younger bull, but he did have a non-typical point coming off his base. Once we made it out into the sage flat, after we tried to cut him off, we realized that there were multiple bulls. And one of the bulls we saw was, sure enough, giant. For my standards, for sure.
Yeah. Any standard of measure, he was a giant.
Yeah, big elk, man.
I've killed some big elk on some places that weren't public land. Well, the biggest elk I've ever killed was on public land. He was in the 370s of, in terms of a trophy measurement. And so you describe this guy. I want to say he had 6 on one side, but I always make fun of people for saying he was 355 inches of 7 by 6. And I'm like, you had time to count the points? Because I rarely ever have time to count the points. I'm trying to figure out how to get over there if I can. I think he was a 6-by, but I don't know that for sure, which means he would have had 6 points on one side. But it doesn't matter. He was tall, wide. He had tying length from his fronts all the way to his tops. He was a real classic big elk.
Yeah.
And he was pushing an entire herd of cows with some straggling bulls up into the country we can't hunt.
And this is the first time that I've seen this kind of stuff, Ben. I mean, I've now elk hunted 2 years. So last year was my first year elk hunting. Me and my son Bear loaded up our mules and went to over-the-counter unit in Colorado and hunted for 4.5 days basically, and got on a few elk, but just totally, had never done it before. So this is my second elk hunt.
Yep.
And I had a little more help this time. Our buddy Joe Ferranato kind of hooked up this whole deal for me anyway. Had invited me, and it's still public land. He'd never been up here to elk hunt, so we're all learning. But I had never seen big elk outside of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
so
Listen, I mean,
it's incredible.
If you go to Colorado and you spot a bull like we spotted this morning, you'd be the luckiest man alive.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you're in Colorado, most open over-the-counter units, you're not going to see elk like this. And you're not going to have. I mean, how far are we from camp right now?
As the crow flies, probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
So you're not going to be, camping and doing that. And so we were talking about this experience, and I think this morning, it's lucky that we get to record now and reflect on that, because I think this morning's experience is kind of reflective of this country and this hunt that we've had, because we've worked hard, but the elk, while they're here and they're big, they are tough to get on. They are tough to pattern. The winds are switchy no matter where you go.
Right.
And then you get into these situations like we're in this morning where they start in the bottom and they're going to cross, and you got one shot to cut them off. And if you do not cut them off, they're into some country you can't get into, and you're never gonna catch up to them. So, as of this moment, the sun's out for the first time. I'm seeing blue skies in Montana for the first time in a long time, just because of the smoke that we've had. And so I feel lucky to be sitting in the sun right now. But it seems like these elk they've shut up. They shut up right after they kind of walked off from us, and we had a few bugles here about a half an hour ago, but it felt like they might have been bugles from beds. These elk are already laying down. They've been up all night. We've had some full moon phases, and so this hunting, man, every little thing's a challenge. Every little nuance is a
part of, at least most of my hunting success and for other species has just been sheer persistence.
Yeah.
Just trying.
Yeah.
And just trying for a long time.
Yeah.
And so this is our 7th day of hunting, and I kind of just figured we'd get lucky. And when I say that, I don't mean all successful hunters. I mean the best successful hunters, a big part of their regimen is just persistence and endurance and continuing to stick with a game plan.
Yeah.
And then at some point, quote unquote, they get lucky.
Yeah.
So I mean that word luck means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
What I mean is I just felt like as many miles as we've put on that, at some point we're going to pop over one of these ridges and there's going to be, a spike bull down there at 60 yards and, give a cow call and he pops over the ridge, just some fortunate
this is true
thing
though.
happened. And it has not. Now I did have an opportunity to stalk some cows on the second day. I mean, I was totally within striking distance of them. And on the second day, we were seeing big bulls. We had a lot of hunt left, and I chose not to. Today, if I saw a cow elk over on that butte over there that I see miles away, I would commit my life to trying to kill it.
Yeah, I mean the shifting baseline is always hilarious in a hunt like this. You start with a goal, especially like we were talking about. There's a couple points I want to make, but one of them is the transient hunting, travel. If you travel to a place, you're kind of you have this idea that you're limited time, and that's where the shifting baseline comes in. Every time I've ever gone on a guided hunt, your baseline shifts on the first or second day. And the rule is always, if you would have shoot it on the last day, shoot it on the first day. Like if
right.
And that's always the best way to handle that. But in terms of, how do we look at luck? I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, because I look at luck like this confluence of events, right? Because we were sitting up on a glass and knob the other day talking about all the things that have to happen. Think of all the things that have to happen for you to kill an elk. And this goes to like looking on Instagram or whatever social media and seeing a lot of people killing elk.
Right.
I'm happy for those people, but it doesn't always, nor could it, represent how hard it is to do sometimes. And other times it seems like it's simple as could be.
Right.
Other times it seems like just what you said happens. I had a buddy that walked out on a ridge this year, cow called twice and killed a bull.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot. and I don't think he's necessarily that skilled at cow call more than I am. But, that's just a confluence of events. That elk had to be there. He had to be there, and so think about all those. What were we counting? Like 8 elements the other day. So you have to, find the country. In this case,
you've got to, not just find the country. You've got to find the elk inside the country.
Yep.
I mean, like that's the number one challenge. Is you go to a new spot, it's going to take you a couple of days to find elk, and it's real frustrating. I've done it twice now on both hunts, and that first 24 hours, you just think, there's no elk here. Or I do anyway. I've not done it enough to know that if you exert this much energy, this much effort, you're going to find elk.
Right.
And I was with our buddy Bryce, and he was just, he was like, oh, yeah, we're going to find elk. And I was like, really? You think we'll really find elk? And he's like, oh, yeah, we'll find elk. So you got to find elk.
Yeah.
And then they've got to be bugling for you to really be able to work them and navigate around on them. You've got to find a responsive one that's willing to work with you. I can't remember all the other little things you listed, but it goes all the way down to you've got to make a shot. I mean, you could do everything right, and then the bull steps out at 43 yards behind a pine tree, and man, there's a lot of things got to come together.
That's where repetition comes in too. If you keep doing it, so if you have to have those 8 things, right? The other things are like you got to find the elk, right? You got to pattern them. They have to be vocal, and then it comes into what happened this morning. Once you find the elk, you have to be in the right spot. If they're not going to come to you, you got to get yourself in the right spot. Once you're in the right spot, it has to present an ethical shot. And once it presents an ethical shot, you have to draw your bow. Once you draw your bow, you have to send an arrow. Once that arrow hits the animal, it's got to hit the animal in a very precise spot, so it doesn't run off and die somewhere you can't find it, or never die, or run for a mile. And so, but then you have to blood track it and find it, and then finally, this confluence of events has led to success. Any one of those things goes wrong in the midst of all of that.
And it's difficult.
And so we were talking about walking over here. I said, man, at least with a hunt like this where there's failure involved, nobody, you didn't miss a bull. I didn't miss a bull. We didn't, but the failure being just not able to close the distance or draw our bows.
Can I say something about what you said about a traveling hunt?
Yeah.
Like, man, there is this kind of potential to be deceived by people's success at anything.
Oh,
it could be squirrel hunting, it could be bear hunting, it could be elk hunting. But man, when you're traveling and you're picking out 7 days on a calendar, months in advance, and you say, that's when I'm going to that place, and you've got to, and you're driving there, and you're there during that time, it's not even the same game as the guy that lives there and is hunting. And nothing against him, because back in Arkansas, that's me.
Yeah.
I mean, guys talk to me all the time about bear hunting in Arkansas, in national forest, and I'm an open book most of the time, other than just telling people where to go. And deep in my heart, I'm like, good luck, dude. The reason that I'm successful is because I live there.
Yeah.
And I'm able to go on a Tuesday afternoon when the weather's good, or I'm able to say, man, I found a bunch of good sign yesterday. I'm going to spend the next 3 days hunting. Where if I'd have just picked a date on the calendar, it would have been tough. So, you see all these guys killing elk, and man, that's incredible. It's awesome. Everybody has something that they're proximate to that helps them. And I'm not saying you can't kill them traveling, because we know great elk. There's plenty of people that do it all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not. But I'm learning that the real challenge is inside of the transient hunter, and that's fun. But it is frustrating.
Yeah,
it is frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's you add all those things up on what you talked about earlier. It becomes like, what's the definition? What are you looking for at the end of the day? And I could seriously say, I want to kill an elk. Yeah. I'm not going to go on the internet and be like, well, it was a good time getting to know Clay a little bit better and hiking around this beautiful country. No, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that immensely. It was a valuable thing to go and do.
You wanted to kill an elk.
But I want to kill an elk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sitting here saying like, well, the value in the hunting is the experience. Nope. It was a great experience, and I'll remember the experience. But I'm in the mode right now where I want to kill an elk, and I'm not going to mince words. And part of that is when I moved to Montana for the exact same thing you just said, because I lived in places where I felt as if being a transient hunter was about my only option, or getting rich and buying a ranch. You're talking about Texas. And so then you come here, and now I have a chance to build these credentials, to build this skill set over time. And so now I'm at the beginning of that journey where I'm learning to call.
So you've been in Montana about 2.5 years.
This would have been my second residence season. So my second resident September. And so for me, I get to now say, like, I write it in my journal every night, kind of like stuff that happened, stuff I'm learning, just little notes.
You weren't kidding about that?
No, I wasn't kidding about that. Did I say that earlier?
Yeah, I thought you were kidding.
I'm serious. And I say, Clay was nice to me today.
Drew a little picture.
Yeah, I like Clay. Will he go hunting with me tomorrow? Yes or no? Check one. But yeah, I mean, I do think that is rewarding in and of itself, knowing that I'm closer to one day being out here and realizing I'm good at this now.
Mm.
Like, I know that I would never have gotten here if I didn't do it the way if I didn't get the intellectual property on my own, if I didn't struggle, if I didn't hunt public land, if I didn't really become a hunter in the way of the experience of failure. Ooh, that sounded like a bugle. Where's Colby? Colby's gone.
Colby's off. Colby's probably
Colby's
got my
gone.
bow trying to kill an elk.
He's probably up there bugling at us to distract us. Anyhow, we'll see if the elk comes down. But I lost my train of thought because I want to kill an elk. I don't know why I'm even here podcasting now. I think I might just go for a swim.
There's a lot of value in learning something, and that's the same journey that I'm on. Different in that, I guess I'm just kind of putting my feet in the water of the elk world.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Ben. Last year, my son and I decided 3 weeks before we left that we were going to go. Like, it never entered our mind to elk hunt until about August the 7th last year. And I talked to my wife and talked to my son Bear, and I said, let's roll to Colorado and go elk hunting. So I ordered some game calls and learned to bugle and do some cow calling. And so, like, I've the hunting world has glorified elk hunting so much, and rightfully so. It's probably the most majestic.
It's the greatest
horned beast, antlered beast on the continent. I mean, moose would be debatable, but I mean, it. When I say they glorify it, I don't mean that in a negative way.
No,
but at the same time, it's a very tough hunt. It's a low percentage hunt. Just about anywhere you go, there's about a 10% success rate for elk hunters.
Yeah, I think it's specifically archery.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
But I don't know that.
Well, that's probably right. And then we heard, was it Joe the other day that said of the 10% that are successful, if you broke those people down, it would be a very small percentage of successful hunters that are inside of that 10%. Like, basically, it's the same 10% of people.
Yeah, the transient hunter idea the successful transient hunter is a small percentage of that 10%.
Yes, there you go.
And I think that's where a guide comes in. That's where these hunts where you either hire, we could have hired a guide for public land here if we wanted to, or you could have went and paid what it would have taken to hunt this country with a guide.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's just even as somebody who travels, and I know guys that travel from Texas to Colorado every year. I know guys that travel from Pennsylvania to Wyoming every year. I have friends that would only wish to one day do what we're doing, and are probably listening to this or will listen to this and will wonder if this could be them, if they could be here in this beautiful country having chased giant elk and failed miserably. And it can be you. And you can choose to approach it any which way, whether it's you really want to kill an elk, but just to go elk hunt is to see it, to test the waters, as you said, to dip your toe in. I dipped my toe in over the last 5 or 6 years. I killed an elk every year for 4 straight years before I moved to Montana. And I felt like, and I said this when I moved, I felt like this very successful transient elk hunter who wasn't learning the craft. You come to my house, you walk around my house, you'd be like, man, this dude is an elk killer. Like, look at these giant elk.
You have an elk tattoo?
Yeah. You don't want to see where.
Okay.
It's right above. It's a stamp. But you come to my house and you'd be like, yeah, look at this. You would ask me about the elk, and we would look at them, and you would marvel at how big a couple of them are. But that doesn't mean that I know what I'm doing. That doesn't mean that I know this craft and I have the skill set to transfer what I've learned on killing those big elk into what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And so in a way I had to start over and really commit myself both for myself and I
appreciate the honesty of that,
Yeah.
Because it's not all just about having a big animal, but it's about the way.
Yeah.
The way that
the
it
way.
happened. And not that those have any less value.
Right.
We're going to the same place.
Yeah, let me just say I wouldn't be like, well, I would say the honesty of this elk is I got to go to a place and somebody helped me, showed me where they were, and I got it done from there. If we go back to like the 8 elements of the things that have to come together to be successful, in those instances, you eliminate a few of them, 4 of them probably, but you still have to do the other 4 things.
In a guided situation, a private land situation, you're losing. Some of those things become less important.
Exactly.
Those challenge factors.
Exactly. And, well, the biggest elk I've ever killed was on public land in a place I'd never been before.
Right.
And so that I can say that, but I didn't. Again, I was still a transient hunter. I didn't know how to call them. I didn't really know how they used the country, other than that there were a lot of them, and I was lucky to be in the area that I was in.
Yeah.
In Utah. And I was lucky to draw a tag that would allow me to hunt a place where it was abundant with giant elk.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to have a rifle in my hand. And so, it goes back to stuff we talk about all the time. What kind of challenge do you want? And what kind of outcome do you desire? And then once you get that outcome, like me, would you shift the baseline to say, like, killing a big elk is great, but being able to take you out and your son Bear out in a couple of years and really have this down, I think is just my goal shifted. My goal shifted to that, and that's kind of why I want to kill an elk so bad.
Yeah,
because I want to see this pay off. Because I have spent a lot of time away from my family, and I feel that.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/meateater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/meateater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
I like the idea of coming back to a specific place year after year if you could get the tag and really learn it. My most valuable hunting experiences have been in places that I was connected to the place.
Yeah.
And that connection doesn't have to mean that you're from there or your dad hunted there, not that. But just I've spent 7 days of sweat on these mountains.
Yeah.
And spent it with good friends here. And
Colby,
there's Colby.
Colby, did you hear any elk? I heard one,
Did you
right?
really?
That's the same one. He's in his bed, isn't he? He'll come down to water. We'll kill him.
See if you could push him over here. Why don't you walk around?
Let's take
that ridge?
We're going to take an interstitial. You guys can test my new bugling abilities and see if you like it. We'll take a quick interstitial break for me to bugle at this elk. Hang on. Go ahead and narrate this.
So, yeah, Ben is he's got his Phelps bugle tube here.
Got to test it out. You have to test out and make sure that you didn't blow out the latex.
Ben has had a challenge finding a diaphragm collar that fit his mouth, I've heard. But he's got, okay, here we go. Listener, Ben makes odd gyrations when he bugles. Moves from side to side. It really gives the sound some realism.
Realism, yeah. I don't want to be a stationary bugler. I'm working on the levels, like the building of the I'm working on the bridge and the other parts. So whatever. But yeah, I'm like you, dude. I picked up a elk call 2 years ago, and I thought, I've been around hunters that are exceptional at calling, some of the best in the country, in the world. And having seen that, I'm like, well, I got a long way to go. But it's nice to be getting there. It's nice to be traveling down the road to really learn something, really, really learn.
Well, on this hunt, what I learned, Ben, last year in Colorado, we actually called a bull in on the third day, 2 bulls that I didn't realize were legal. And so I was at full draw and passed a bull at 18 yards that ended up being legal, and I didn't know it just because I didn't know fully the regs. But that was the only elk encounter I had ever in a hunting situation. This hunt has been really valuable to me because we have been watching elk. We're kind of watching what they do. I'm able to come back to the same place day after day and see, answer some of these questions of there were elk there today. Are there going to be elk there tomorrow? And most of the time in this country, the answer has been no. But a few times they've been in the same areas. But just been able to watch these elk, listen to them vocalize, listen to them bugle. This was the first hunt I've heard an elk bugle, Ben.
Yeah.
In Colorado last year, even though we called in 2 raghorns, we did not hear a bugle the entire hunt. We were there early. But so this has been an incredible experience.
Yeah, I mean, and we didn't hit the rut either. I mean, this is not, we're getting there. They're starting to round up their cows and move them around, the bigger bulls, but we're not in the peak of it. You know, some people think of it like there's a day where it turns on, and that day shifts depending on where you are. But like there's a day where you just feel like there's slobbering elk willing to run to 10 feet of you just to check you out if you make the right sounds. We haven't quite experienced that, but it's been close to that. Yesterday was a windy crap of a day, kind of.
Yeah.
But today is beautiful. That wind blew out all the smoke, and today is a beautiful blue sky day. And this morning you just, when the light came up and the drainage we're in, like it just started to, for the first time I've seen in a couple of weeks, it started to kiss the tops of these ridges, and you felt like you were in, late September elk. And so there's definitely a feeling there too, and there's nothing more fun than that chess game we played today. Because I would say, just by the by, on the point that we were making about learning how to be an elk hunter, really learning, we made the right plays.
Yeah,
we were cautious enough to get above them and see where they were and what they wanted to do. And then when they moved, we ran and we moved fast, and we missed them by 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If they would have stopped and got a drink of water, if a bull would have came and challenged that bull with the club, maybe they would have stopped for 10 minutes. And if we popped out into the creek where we did,
we were right on them.
We
saw their tracks.
They would have been 80, 90 yards from where we popped out. We could have made a call and we could have completed the bulldogging that we talked about earlier. So I mean, it's close is close. Feels good to be close, but it still irks you a little bit. But you brought your boy out here, huh?
Yeah. So Bear's 14 years old. He did have to miss some school, but they're doing quite a bit of virtual schooling. So my wife and I made the decision that he was going to come with me. And man, here, Ben, you've got younger kids. I've got older kids. This is what I've learned. When they turn 16, you often think when they turn 18 and like go to college, you kind of lose they break away just a little bit. Well, when they turn 16 and get a car and start getting jobs, they can't go with dad for 10 days wherever they want. And so Bear's 14, and I told my wife, I said, there's only a couple more years where, he's not going to have usually our kids get a job when they're 16, and we try to start introducing them to being a normal, good human and working. And so I wanted Bear to come. I wanted him to experience this, and we've worked him. So it's been great having him here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that you guys have gone on other hunts, obviously. Do you see changes in him when he comes to this country? Do you see like that he appreciates the time with you, the time in camp, the time like?
I think there's value at different levels. To me, there's like this responsibility that he's learning from. I talked to him about his school, just like, hey man, if you're going to come, you're really going to have to, you can't do bad in a class. I will be my reputation will be ruined. So there's responsibility of, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, you have to be responsible in other areas of your life. And Ben, that's something I talk about all the time. As hunters, we talk about limiting factors in our hunting, and we try to be like better elk callers and better shape and all this. And a lot of us, if we took care of the other parts of our life better, we would have more time.
Yeah.
And that time would be more quality time, because we wouldn't be stressed out about all the chaos that's in other places.
Let me just say as a point, it's a great point, because preparedness for hunting is directly correlates with what you just said. Yeah. How much time you spend shooting your bow, how much time you spend getting your gear prepared, how much time you spend looking at Onyx maps is how much time you have to do those things and can commit to those things. I vacillate. Sometimes I'm like, I'm really prepared, and other times like, man, work was crazy, kids were crazy.
Yeah.
Kids started school in September. It got wild.
And what I'm saying is that limiting factor often is is time. Like that's the biggest thing, is just like your time away. So what I'm teaching Bear is that, hey, you take care of business in these other portions of life, and then you'll have the time. So that was the number one thing. Because last year when I took him, Ben, and my wife readily brought this up to me, he came back and kind of had a hard time jumping back into the routine. And so I told him, I said, hey, you think you can do that? And so that was a personal challenge for him, and he's already done a lot of his work. So that's this like real functional responsibility thing. Man, when a young kid is 14 years old, a young boy, every kid's different, but they're starting to find their own identity. And part of that identity sometimes is seeing your dad or maybe where your dad wasn't always right. I mean, they're kind of just awakening into adulthood. And, what I wanted for Bear and I on this trip was, I wanted to show him that I valued him enough to bring him on something that was really important to me. And so I think this trip for us has been, I think he is appreciated that I brought him. If I could, it sounds really simple, but Bear's not super expressive. I told somebody yesterday he's probably the least visibly expressive of any of the kids, but so that's important, man, for a kid to just know that his dad loves him. That sounds simple, but we all as adults even deal with this fatherly issue inside of our life of wanting to be validated, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be challenged and given instruction from a father. We all have that desire. We really do, even if it's hard sometimes. And so, yeah, I think that's been good for us. And Bear is a good woodsman. Man, I tell you what, I would put, he's inexperienced, but I would say, Bear Newcomb, saddle up that mule and ride all the way over to that mountain and see if you find elk, and he'd do it.
Oh, yeah, he saddled up. He's I'm going to go glass for elk on this knob, and he just saddled up the mule, and off he went. And I thought, wow, I know some 30-year-old men that couldn't do that or wouldn't do that or might fall off that mule. That mule probably would do it.
Bear's got a lot of desire, too, for hunting. Like, all my kids have hunted and have different varying levels of true interest in it. Bear, I really think, he's going to be a hunter. He has a lot of desire, and not every kid's going to have that the same. I've said many times before, I want my kids to be hunters, but they're not supposed to take it as serious as I am.
Yes.
That's the other thing inside of hunting is like you hear, not everybody has to take it ultra serious. There's value in the guy that goes to deer camp 3 days a year and buys a hunting license and contributes to conservation.
That's right.
And, kills a deer. Then there's also the value in the guys like us that are like dedicated our lives to it, like to the extreme, and have found a way to, provide for our families through it financially. Not everybody's supposed to be like that. So I don't need all my kids to be that, but Bear loves it. And
I would almost, I don't know. I hate to even speculate about this, but, my son is about to turn 4. And I think of this idea that I don't want him to try to be if he said, Dad, I want to have a podcast, I would say, okay, if that's what you really want, I want you to take part in the things I take part in, but I want you to find your own way to it. I found my own way. My dad hunts, but I found my own way. And then I eventually brought him along with me. Which is awesome for both of us, I think. And so if he said, Dad, I want to be a wildlife biologist, I would be so thrilled to hear that, because he would find his own way to the appreciations that I've found, instead of trying to copycat his, even at any age, really. But, I know at some age you just want to follow your dad, and that's how I was. At like 12 years old, all I wanted to do was follow my dad. I didn't really care where, and hunting was very much just like having a sandwich with him in the woods. It wasn't.
Man, that's valuable, Ben. To have a 12-year-old or 14-year-old that wants to follow their dad, is a big deal.
Yeah,
And in the trend of the age is broken up families in whatever way, and anything that can bring that back together is a positive thing.
Yeah, you're right. And those years for me defined a lot of what I do, in a strange way. And I think you put it well to say that, you really want to follow your dad, but you also want to have this relationship that has a little more definition to it. And in the woods, there is definition to it. I'm the leader. You follow me. I tell you to point and shoot. I tell you when to take the safety off. I tell you how to be safe with a firearm or a archery tackle. I tell you how to shut the door, not be too loud. I tell you when it's time to eat lunch and when it's time to take a nap and when it's time to get real serious about being successful. And so I think those things are helpful interactions too with the kid to define those roles. And I regret not doing a podcast with my dad when we elk hunted last week.
That would be cool.
You guys followed me on Instagram. You saw a little bit of that action, but it was time I think he wanted to spend with my kids. So
I know he had a great time, but did he have a great time?
Yeah, I think he did. And the same thing we were talking about coming up the creek here after we didn't get into those bulls like we wanted to today. You're tired. You're thinking hard about like the little failures and the little idiosyncrasies that didn't go right. You're tired. You are, if you're like me and you're really starting to get hard on yourself and competitive, and like that inner voice that says like you can do better, you need to do better, you need to work harder. This is something you really want to get good at. I think he had that, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was interesting to see him go through that because he got a new bow. He got a new Matthews bow. He shot a crossbow for years, so he worked hard. I mean, he was calling me. That was almost the coolest part of our hunt, for him to call me twice a week or him to send me pictures of his groups every time he shot his bow.
Yeah.
That was almost as cool as anything. And then to see him, my dad has a great appreciation for nature, and a great appreciation for all wildlife. He knows every bird, he knows every tree, he understands the rhythms of nature. And to see him hike up on a ridge with me and look over into a valley and see this like most beautiful vista, and just have him kind of be like, hey, let's stop a minute. You want to just stop a minute and look here? And a lot of wows, a lot of amazing. Was
he mainly a deer hunter back in Maryland?
Yeah. Mainly a deer hunter. I think, like I was saying earlier, I think he found these other types of hunting through me when I got into the industry and started doing some things and started really realizing my own passion expanded from what we did as kids. We were those weekend deer hunters as kids. We hunted a lot of deer as much as we possibly could. You're dodging like you are now. You're dodging your new job and your sports, and you're kind of doing that. So you kind of become a weekend hunter only that's the only time you have to go, and he would have to go because he ran a small business. But yeah, we were very much like the very common Eastern weekend warrior deer hunters. We hunted as much as we could in the fall, and that's kind of all we did.
What's the acronym for that? Common Eastern weekend warrior deer hunters.
Seed. Yeah. We can work on it. We got a lot of marketing ideas. We'll talk about bear grease here in a minute, what we can do with that. But so that was it. I mean, that it felt really normal. It felt very communal. It felt just like another thing that we did. We also sat around and watched sports a lot. That was just another thing we did.
Yeah.
But hunting was just like
it's pretty cool that you could bring him out here and pretty much hunt from the house. If you're driving from your house and he was seeing your kids. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a good combination.
Kind of a family deal.
Yeah, we would hunt in the morning and then go grab lunch, and I would work, and he would see my kids and spend time with his grandkids because he doesn't get to see them as often as I know he and I would both like. And so that was a good combination, like a weird mix, a weird transitional mix in our lives, I think, because eventually, hopefully, those two boys will be with us.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll say this honestly, and this is something I didn't know that I would say publicly, but I will. Is that I got desperate for him to live a long time. I was walking around the woods with him being like, man, because he had heart surgery this year. He had heart issues. He has heart issues for a long time. And walking around the woods with him and seeing him with my young children, there was like this, not even quiet desperation. This was like a very loud desperation that this man lived for a very long time. And so we could see this kind of all come back, to have my sons as 12-year-olds with him and me. Like, I got to have that. So if you're a cardiologist, call me up. I need tips for my old man. So yeah, that was part of it too. An interesting part of it. There's something that was more internal for me than I thought it would be. But, and doing it during a pandemic is also kind of makes you realize lots of things.
I said elk hunters are probably few in the statistical category of small. What am I trying to say? We're the only people in North America right now that hadn't washed their hands in 7 days. That's what I'm trying to say.
I was looking at my fingernails when I was making that hand analogy. I'm like, Jesus, this ain't looking good.
Most people in the pandemic are using hand sanitizer. We're all like cooking food with each other and like reaching in the pickle jar. Here's
a good point that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. I feel, and I've probably said this on the show before, I do feel in a hunt like this, it takes me about a day and a half to 2 days to slough off society, to get rid of it, to slough off any kind of work-life balance things that are family balance things that are bothering me. Slough off this idea that I might go be able to sit on the couch, or I might be able to go in the air conditioning, or I might be, it takes me about 2 days to kind of mentally and physically, expel all of that softness. And then it starts to get good.
Yeah.
You can hike a ridge and think like, I haven't looked in a mirror in 3 days. I don't know what I look like. I don't care. I don't know what I smell like. I don't care. All I care about is this hill and that elk, and the rest of it is gone.
Yeah, I'd say that's really close to how I would describe it. It's a unique feeling that I don't know that a lot of humans get to have. There are other people that are using the outdoors in extended time periods, but they're few and far between. I mean, like, what other thing would cause us to come out here for 7 days and camp like this? I mean, we wouldn't just come out here to camp. Very few people would come out here just to hike for 7 days.
Yeah.
Like, the hunting experience is one of those things that draws us into wild places, and it does take some time to adjust to that. And by about day 3, and especially on day 4, you don't even know what day it is.
Yeah.
I think by the 4th day, you don't know if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, or I find I lose track of that.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of in this rhythm, and it feels like it always on the first part of the hunt. It always feels like you've got this enormous amount of time, and then by about the 5th day, the days just fly by, and every opportunity just seems like it's doubled in speed. And here we are on the 7th day, and I mean, honestly, I don't feel fatigued. I guess mentally maybe a little bit, just because of we've not killed an elk, but like I just feel like this is where I live.
God, man, I could not express how much I think this is where I should be. I can't express how much like wearing these First Light clothes feels like what I should be doing all the time. When I take them off, and wash them in the wash, I am so sad that I now have to like put on a collared shirt, or man, I don't know, maybe I'll write a book one day, but I'll never be able to express how much this feels like what I ought to be doing.
Yeah. Well, what were we saying yesterday, Ben, that they estimate that there's been 108 billion humans that have ever lived on the earth, and most of those humans were hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, this was their life.
Yeah. I mean, we're not roughing it. We're going to camp. We made antelope, potatoes and onions last night. But it's like even that element of it, still, you're without some of the things that become negatives in your life. You're kind of without some of the modernity that kind of can, if you allow it to, become poisonous. And it just feels like when it's rhythmic, like you said, when you're in a rhythmic situation with a landscape like we are here. What are we doing right now? These elk are laying down. What are we doing?
Laying down.
When they're elk are on their feet.
Colby's laying down.
Colby's taking a nap. When the elk are on their feet, we're on their feet. We're working hard. We want to be at water when they go to water. And so when you get in that rhythm, and that's kind of your primary, other things are distractions from that, that, to me, that element is perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And it eliminates this idea that I have to be clean, or I have to look a certain way, or I have to act a certain way. The only thing that matters is I'm willing to get up at 4:30 in the morning and do whatever I have to do, to be in that rhythm and to experience that. And it's hard to explain.
If we did this every day of our life, and our means of survival was actually acquiring meat and edible goods and finding shelter and whatnot, we'd get real good real quick at knowing what was worth expending energy towards. Yesterday, the wind was blowing 30 miles per hour, and we all got up and went elk hunting. And we said after the morning, we were like, when you have 7 days to hunt, you hunt on days like this. You don't stay back. You just can't. But if we did this 365 days a year, this is the day that you stay back at camp and put on calories from what you killed 3 days before.
Yeah. I mean, our limiting factors here are like the thing that we left. The society, family. This is not in a negative connotation in any way. Like the push and pull of this experience in terms of what limits us from being out here forever is the things we have back home. Is the things that we have as responsibilities, is things we have as our, the things that give us fulfillment back there, and our priorities in our lives. That's the push-pull ultimately of the time. When you say 7 days, 7 days is about as much time as you can expend doing this and still have a functional life when you get back, and not do any real harm to your daily life or your work life or anything like that.
Man, my wife's rooting for us. I feel most pressure, Ben, from her. She wants to eat an elk, man.
Yeah, my wife's the same way.
She loves elk. She wants to eat an elk. And on the second day over here in this other little draw, when I was within striking distance of 2 velvet spikes and a couple of cows, I took this video, and Bear was with me, and I videoed these elk, and then I spun it around to Bear, and then I ended up later sending that to Misty. And she said, "What's the problem? Why didn't you shoot those up?" And I said, "Well, they were only cows. I didn't tell her about the spikes." I said they were cows. And she said, there's the problem, Clay. Those are not cows. Those were elk. Yep. Sometimes your spouse says something.
That's pretty good.
And you realize that they may not be on the same page as you.
That's the problem.
She was like, those aren't cows, Clay. Those are elk.
Yep. You're not really, you're not tracking this, man. Yeah. I mean, my wife's the same way. She wants to eat elk, and that's her favorite meat. And my son is rooting for me. Like, they have a vested interest in this too, because they know why I'm here, and I think they want success for me, but I think they also want, this all to be validated, this time spent away from them to be validated in a way that, and that validation is awesome when all this comes together, like the sacrifices they're made with not having me around, because it certainly is a sacrifice for both of them, all of them. Mm-hmm. And the sacrifices I've made to try to do this, when that culminates in like a nice steak dinner, that adds. I mean, it doesn't just add to the feeling, it kind of defines the feeling of when that happens.
Well, that's what gives all this value. Like, we sometimes as hunters think that we are kind of independent, and like we like to go out in wild places, usually by ourselves. I mean, on a hunt like this, we're with other people. But really what gives that solitude and this independent experience value is that we have someone to share it with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what gives it value.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't have family, if we didn't have friends, if we didn't have these other people, this wouldn't have as much value. That's what I'm seeing more and more, is that so much of the value of what we do is not just in this. Because what if we just did this and we had no one to share it to?
Yeah.
I think there's a Brandy Carlisle song that says, I think it says, these lines on my face tell the story of my life, but if there's no one to tell the story to, they don't mean anything.
Yeah, it's true. And that goes back to the push and
Colby,
pull.
did I get it right?
Colby's thinking that now
Colby's,
we're just getting to it's like it's let's look for elk, man. We're getting Brandy Carlisle. That might be the first Brandy Carlisle reference ever on the podcast.
Well,
and about 200 hours of talking.
Wow.
Well done, Clay. Well done.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth.
But yeah, I mean, I get it, man. That the push-pull is kind of washed over by that idea too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you want to get back to them and share this with them, and I think that might be to bring it all around for me, talking about why I moved to Montana, why I wanted this to be kind of the place we stay for until they kick us out is all of that, all of this together, to be able to learn a craft, share that with my children, allow them the paths and opportunities to do those things that I appreciate, and to see like in their backyard that they can go kill an elk, they can enjoy its flesh, they can have that be a part of their lifestyle and the way that they live and the way that they connect not only to the outside but to their family and the people, their friends, people around them. Like, I want all that for them, and I see public land and I see elk and deer and bears as a vector of that thing that I want for them ultimately. And then, that desperation to have my dad around long enough for him to also see that come fulfilled, because he's the reason that would happen if it does. So I think all of that is kind of what I'm looking for, from Montana. Yeah. That's all you got to do for me, Montana.
That's all.
Just do it. Now, we should talk about bear grease. There's no really transition to bear grease from what we were just talking about, but we should talk about bear grease. Can you to just define your relationship with bear. Like, what you're wearing a hat that says bear grease. Colby's wearing a hat that says bear grease.
Yeah, so in camp the other day, one of the guys we were with was like, what is, Colby and I both have these hats on that say bear grease. And he said, what is bear grease? And no, so Ben, bear grease is a real thing, and it is actually a rendered fat from the fat of a bear. You heat fat, and it turns into a liquid oil that doesn't go rancid as quickly as pork lard. So historically, in much of North America, bear fat, especially from the time of European exploration and colonization up until, probably the Civil War, bear fat was a very common way to, you needed grease for cooking, for all the different things you can use lard for. And so anyway, bear grease is that.
Yep.
And
but it's more than that.
It's more than that. Feed me along here if I'm not, because we talked about this extensively. But no, one of my favorite books is written by a guy named Frederick Gerstacker. Between 1837 and 1844, he traveled in Arkansas, and he was a rich kid from Germany that had a really good education. He was 21 years old when he got here, and he traveled and hunted within what then was the frontier, and he did a lot of bear hunting in Arkansas. And his favorite dog was named Bear Grease. And no, bear grease has always been something special to me for whatever reason. Just that it's really a kind of a folksy thing. They say that you can forecast weather with bear grease.
Yep.
And I've been experimenting with that for several years. And bear grease does change in consistency based upon barometric pressure and different things. And there was a man named Gordon Wimsatt in, I think, White Cloud, New Mexico, that became world famous for predicting weather and earthquakes with bear grease.
What was his name?
Pretty sure it was Gordon Wimsatt.
Okay.
We wrote an article about him in Bear Hunting Magazine, and he has a chart. We have the chart. We published it with permission a few years ago, but he has a whole chart of when you put a jar of bear grease in the south-facing window, what it does and what that means. And he was actually on the Today Show in the 1970s because he predicted an earthquake in South America.
With bear grease?
Yes. But now bear grease has lots of practical uses. That's
pretty practical.
Yeah, if you could predict major, catastrophes.
Okay.
We actually predicted a global pandemic last year. We didn't say anything about it. But.
You forgot to mention it. We were so worried about, the grease.
The grease, yeah.
All right, what else can it do?
Like, are you you want actually what people use it for?
Well, it can cure baldness.
Yeah. They very much so are adamant about the old literature that it. That
Colby, you're not bald, Colby. You've been wearing a hat all week. You got a full head of hair? Let me see your hair. Yeah, this looks good. You're not going to need any grease anytime soon. No, you're fine. You're fine.
You can use it for conditioning leather. It really doesn't totally waterproof it, but back in the day, it would have done a better job of waterproofing than anything else. What I like to use it for is cooking, Ben. Like anything you're frying. If you're frying fish, if you're frying elk backstrap, man, I wish we had some. If you're frying anything, bear oil is a very clean, very it's just great pan frying oil. They used to use it to lubricate anything that was metal, like flintlock muzzleloaders, different things. They would lube up their patch and ball in a musket with bear grease. Lots of different usages, and the reason I like that phrase and we use that so much is because the bear grease deal is it's kind of like this lost thing. Like when we started rendering bear fat and writing stuff about it, it was kind of like this lost commodity that at one time was super valuable, and then the world bypassed it And, you know, I like coming back to some of those things.
Yep. We can't have it get too popular because we need our bear populations to remain intact. But
True.
It does, it points back to a lot of things. You and I were talking a little bit about kind of the bedrocks of your life and some of the things that you've crafted that, I hope people can go listen to your podcast, Bear Hunting Magazine podcast, and learn about. But those bedrocks are kind of like faith, family, outdoors. And there's a lot of traditions. You told me you were eighth or not? You're eighth generation.
My kids are eighth generation Arkansans.
And that is connected to a lot of things. The way that you live, what you value, the way that you see the world. And I think it's funny that bear grease is very analogous to that in some ways. There's a lot of things that probably that your family done have been passed by in the modern age that you can always draw back to and that are still useful for people. So just tell us all the things. What are all the things that people should know
about
everything?
No.
But we were talking about one thing I think we can close on, and I know this can be somewhat difficult to talk about, but is important, is this idea of your faith and how it translates to what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Is that something you're comfortable talking about? Sure.
No, my faith is the bedrock of everything that I do. It's the foundation of why I want to bring my son here with me. In hunting is not that. I hear some people in the outdoor world talking about the outdoors is my church, or that's where I meet with God. That can be true. But if this is the only place that you meet with God, for me, that wouldn't be enough. But this is. I'm always looking for ways to connect what I'm doing in life back into. No. That's the wrong way to say it. I'm scrambling around here, Ben.
That's all right.
Forgive me.
No forgiveness needed.
Yeah.
Like I said, some of these things are just hard to articulate. But I think it's important for people. It's something that we skip over, and on this podcast, we often try to go dive headfirst into something that might be uncomfortable or controversial. And I think faith, strangely, has become one of those topics.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near as devout as you. My faith is probably different than yours. But I think I appreciate and want to learn about the way that you practice and the way that it intertwines with the things that we're doing this week and talk about it rather than, fight about it or disagree about it or project our own ideologies on each other in terms of like our own faiths or the only way we see those things. But I think, for me, when I think about you, I know that's a big part of your, life. We haven't known each other for very long, but I know that's a big part of your life. And I very much appreciate your perspectives on everything, specifically hunting and what we're doing now. So the crossroads of those two things is I'm sure important. It has to be.
Yeah. Well, and when we're talking about faith, I mean, I guess we got to talk about specifically what I'm talking about. I mean, I would say we strive to live a biblically based life, and I think the connection to this is that I do believe in a creator. I believe God created this place. I believe there's some of the modern Christian ideologies of creation and stuff that don't mix with science. I think science validates God in so many ways. And that's actually kind of a personal journey that I'm on right now, reading about, the trying to understand the origins of humanity from science. And I'm amazed, Ben, at the similarities between a biblical story of creation and what we actually find in science. There's a lot more that meshes than doesn't, honestly. It all depends on who you talk to. But
that's a good way to put it.
But
sure.
there's a way where I think it all meets together. But no, I live by a value system. I have a value system, and I want that value system transferred to my kids. Hunting is not my salvation. It's just a portion of who I am. I don't draw my identity from my hunting. My identity as a man comes from, just like I was talking about with my son. A lot of his identity will come from me validating him, his relationship with me, and how I build him. If you could distill my faith and my relationship with God down, it would be that, man, we are spiritual beings, massively different than animals. I mean, there's a lot of people, I've heard lots of different things. There's a lot of people that don't think we are different than animals. I do. I think physically we are like animals, but we clearly have something that's undeniably different.
Sure.
And I think that thing is God inside of us. I think it's God's. He put a transmitter inside of us that he didn't put inside of other animals, and that means we can connect to God. And so that value system comes from that connection, and that's a massive part of my life. And I think where we were talking yesterday about how hunting would maybe fit into that is that I think hunting brings us back at some level to original design.
Yeah.
Like man in the beginning was, we were hunter-gatherers. Life was pretty simple. It was very hard, but very simple. And I think a lot of what's happened today is we've moved away from a lot of the original design of humanity. And I'm not saying that everybody should be a hunter, because they really shouldn't. But there's certain things in life that draw us back to something that's really primitive and human, and I think that has value.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's I'm not trying to over spiritualize that, but there's a lot of things that right now is taking us away from, if I could just say it that way, taking us away from original design. And I think a key is staying close to original design, and hunting would just be a super tiny part of that. And that original design to me would be, families and fathers and mothers and families that are able to transfer values into kids that aren't. There's so much, man. Golly,
think about it this way. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was thinking, what we were just describing about our families, like how they rooting for us. And they depend on us, and we want to bring the meat back, and we depend on them to tell them these stories and bring this to them. That's not new. That's not new at all.
Right.
It's been going on for as long as we've been bipedal, and able to enact. Since we were on the plains of Africa, throwing rocks at hyenas, and so, that plays into what you're talking about. Certainly. Yeah. It's certainly defined.
Hey, here's a good example, Ben. This week, me and Colby and Bear took an afternoon off from hunting to go zoom into a meeting that our church had that was really important to us. It was a meeting that was planned at the last minute, and we just found out about it, and we were like, dang, we're gonna be in Montana. And I talked to my wife. I actually thought about not coming. That was in the books.
Oh, wow.
Just like, hey, Montana's done. We'll just eat the $1,000. This is what we value. I wanted my son to see that I wasn't going to shirk really what's important for something, even though we could rationalize it. Oh, I've got $1,000 tag. Oh, we got people planning for us to come. Really, I was, Colby can tell you, we talked about not coming. But after talking to my wife and we said, you know what, we could zoom in. And so we took the day off. We went over and we participated in it was kind of just a unique meeting that we had. I won't go into the details of it, but it was really important to us. And man, that right there is the way you transfer a value system to your kid.
Yeah.
Show them that, because he sees how passionate I am about hunting. He knows I'll sacrifice just about anything for hunting. That's not going to be hard for him. What's going to be hard for him is to see, that's where there is true value that has to be adhered to no matter what. And there's creative ways to do it. And we participated in the meeting. It was cool. Our faces, we were dressed in camo in the truck, and our faces were up on the screen at this meeting because everybody else was in there in person. But they made, they were like, yeah, Clay and Colby and Bear are going to be zooming from Montana. And so there we are,
That's
wearing
awesome.
our camo. And, all that I've said probably doesn't make much sense. I hope that makes sense to you. Where there's value, you've got to be able to realize it and in a real functional way live it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that, as hunters and fathers and brothers, I always say that I have like a lot of things that I have to do, be good at, and I have to balance. And I've learned this from other people, but I want to be a father, husband, friend. I want to, be a good at my job. I want to be a good, the pandemic has really taught me that being a neighbor is one thing I would add to that, being a good neighbor. And I think you would add a servant of Christ to that probably. And so, and I've struggled, we could talk about my faith forever, but I've struggled with it in many ways. But, that's what you're talking about. It's just like, how do you, when you think about your life and what you really need to be good at, and you really need to put time and put pressure on yourself to really value over other things. Like, I didn't say hunter in those things I just mentioned. I didn't, and I wouldn't. And I there may be other times in my life where I might have. And I don't. If somebody would say to me like, I would sacrifice being a good father and a good husband to kill this elk. I'm like, boy, check yourself at the door on that one. That's crazy. But I think I don't think anybody would say that outright, but there's certain people that see these obsessions and let those things push them a little bit further from their priorities.
Oh, we've got to have balance. I mean, there's balance in everything. And, there are, if your life's built in a certain way and strong enough, you have a strong enough relationship with your wife, if you have a strong enough relationship with your family, you can expend, where you can go, you can do stuff, and it's okay, and it doesn't hurt anything, and it actually helps things. I think if you're doing things right and finding the architecture for your life, and if I could insert that phrase, what's the architecture for your life? Not everybody that I know should go elk hunting for 9 days in September. I mean, like, there were times in my life when I could not have. But right now, that fits inside the architecture. I can bring my son. My wife is, excited about that. It's part of my career. There's just all these things. But a good leader of a home has to be able to discern the correct architecture for his family, and then live with it and go with it. And that architecture is going to be different at different times. When my kids were young, I don't know that I'd been able to do this. Drive 24 hours. Your situation is different. You're a lot closer to home. You could be home this afternoon if you wanted to. Like, that's the key, man. Balance, finding the architecture for your family, not shirking responsibility where there needs to be responsibility, but you can still come out here and give everything you've got and be an excellent hunter. And I love people that have dedicated their lives to a craft. And for me, that's hunting. For other people, it's knife making, it's IT stuff, it's being a veterinarian, whatever. Dedicate yourself to it, be an expert at it. And I think that makes us a better human. I really do. Like, you got to be passionate about something.
Let me tell you about elk calling in terms of what you just said. I find myself, because there's a while, like you said, like you mentioned earlier, I had issues with mouth calls. I got a thin palate. It's caused other issues with my sleep and things like that. So I discovered this recently. Oh man, I got this thin palate mouth calls have never quite worked. So I worked on it. Now that I knew that, I worked on it and I got it right and I figured it out. And from here I'll go on. But I felt and feel so much better as a man, as a functional human, as a man, having started to learn something and feel competent at something I previously had hoped to acquire as part of my skill set. I feel more confident. I'm better served to tackle problems in my daily life. As simple as learning to elk call and hearing today and all the other days I've hunted this year, elk respond to my elk call. Elk come running into me. I set my mind to something I wanted to do. I decided that this was going to be a craft that I wanted to, over the long haul, really get good at. And to see that realized in terms of like the start of the journey, it has been huge for me. And how good I feel. It's just when I wake up in the morning. And so that's what hunting adds. This is just one little part. Now, when I go outside and shoot 3 good arrows every night, I feel good about that too. I'm a little further down that journey than I am with elk calling, but nonetheless, how many different levels are there? Yeah. I recently took up I'm going to learn everything there is about knife sharpening. I'm going to learn. I've got my work sharp. I'm going to learn every single thing there is to know about sharpening everything, understanding the blades, the material, the edging, all of it. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hunting is full of crafts. It's full of acquired skills. And the application of those skills is one of the things that brings a reward back to you. And that wraps around all the things we've already talked about. So I'm with you, man. I couldn't replace that, I don't think. Only because it's this is a three-dimensional skill and craft. Yeah. Not only if I learn, I guess if you learn woodworking and you build a table and then you're eating with your family on that table, you've kind of realized the entire experience.
Yeah.
Same thing here. If you learn how to sharpen a knife really well and you learn how to call and you learn how to shoot your bow and that all comes together and then you get to experience that with your family. I think that's probably the definition of that craft.
And dedication to craft, if you were to dissect, like a great knife maker or a great musician or a great elk hunter or a great woodworker, you would be able to fundamentally get down to the same essential qualities of people that had persistence, they had curiosity, they had to gain knowledge, they had to practically apply that knowledge, because there's all these different steps that people don't follow all the way through. Like maybe you have the knowledge, but you never sharpen your knife. You never dedicate the time to actually scratching on it. Or maybe you scratch on a stone all the time like I did when I was in college for 6 months and never could stinking get the knife sharp. And then you realize, there's a knowledge base, and you learn actually the technology of an edge. And but all these, whatever it is, all these things funnel down to character inside of a person, I feel like. And that's what ultimately has value, because that character then can flow into other parts of your life. And that's true, man. It really does. It can. And so.
Yeah, and it's never, and you're never, look, I'm 34, and I've been in the hunting industry for 11 years, 12 years. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while. It's been over a decade. And I don't have any ego. I'm not a finished product. I don't think I'm better at this than anyone. And I hope I never will, even if I actually am, even if the time comes where those elk heads in my house came from, a foundational learning experience and craftsmanship, woodsmanship, instead of money and a guide, and so, even when that happens, I hope to still, eliminate these parts of I'm good at this now, and continue to just find other things to improve upon.
About a month ago, we interviewed a guy, and I don't know that we're going to get to air the interview because he was, I'm not going to tell the state, but he was a government lion hunter.
Oh.
And honestly, he's probably one of the best lion hunters on the continent right now. And he told me, well, what's interesting, Ben, about him was because he's a government lion hunter, he doesn't have an Instagram page, he doesn't have a website, he's not trying to sell hunts. It was like the distillation of this man. There was no ego. His job was to catch lions with hounds, and he used mules, and he hunts. 300 days a year catching lions, and he told me he talked about another man in another state that he said was the best dry ground lion hunter that ever drew a breath of air on the earth, and that man was this man's mentor. I wish I could say all their names, and he said what makes that man so great was the fact that he never knew how good he was, and he still doesn't. His humility led him through life and led him on a search for knowledge that he's still on, even though right now he's probably the best, the mentor, the other guy that I hadn't met yet. And I said, wait a minute, you're telling me? I stopped him, and I said, you're telling me that humility is what makes that guy great? And he said, absolutely. He said, when you think you know it, you stop learning. Yeah. When you know that you don't know, you keep learning. And there's no cap to that.
Yeah, it never ends.
And it was so simple, but you take that into any part of your life. And this even goes back to, biblical value system. Humility is a key definer of all of our lives, is that we know that we don't know, but we're on a search to know. Not a false humility that's just like, oh, woe is me, but just humility brings realism. Humility brings, I know I'm not a good elk hunter. I'm trying to be a good elk hunter. I'm going to learn. Anyway, I thought that was powerful.
It is. And I think in the hunting, if we just turn inward for a minute and you think about like the hunting world and what the hunting world, both of you and I are both in hunting media. We both have been so for a while. We both do it for a living, and kind of the things that the hunting industry itself searches for, this expertise, the representation of product, the authenticity, all of those things I think are important, but I think we grasp for them too hard. I think we pursue them with too much fervor. We don't sit back and say, how can we represent what we're talking about to the people that want to get into hunting? Understand, it's going to be hard. There are certain people that have ways of doing things that they've crafted over years and years and years of experience and conditioning. They are sharpening themselves, and they can help you get going. Are they experts? Yes. Is there an ultimate expert in any one of these pursuits? Absolutely not. And I kind of wish someone would have told me way earlier, and maybe I just had to get to this place, but don't microwave it. Don't microwave it, because if you think that you can skip 10 steps and all of a sudden start killing big stuff, and that's the purpose. Hopefully what I've said here today, I don't think I've talked about this on the show very much at all, but hopefully that story that I've told about kind of my own journey could teach anyone out there that, and even this hunt, you came all the way up here from Arkansas, spent all this time, and probably aren't going to go home with an elk unless we get a Hail Mary at the last moment here. Yet, that's a part of a larger journey, and it's an important part of that journey. And so, don't microwave it. If you're out there and you got an Instagram page and you want to get followers,
cheat the process.
Don't cheat the process.
You can't.
Yeah.
Because even if you go on
you can fake yourself. You can kill 3 giant elk this year, and put those out and start to gain notoriety for that or whatever.
Right.
But as you said, the process is always going to be there, and it always requires one thing of you, which is dedication and humility.
And so that's where the real value of everything that we do in our life has to be about the process.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go home from this hunt, and if I go home without an elk, I will have valued the process. Yeah. I really will. There's just no way to get there. Like, if the end goal was elk horns, it would have been better off for me to stay in Arkansas and save up $15,000, which I'm just not going to do, and buy some hunt somewhere. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it this way, and so there's got to be value, honor inside of that, and personally, I'm not looking for that. There's going to be no honor on Instagram for the sunset pictures I post.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I still don't mistake me for saying that I didn't come here to kill an elk and that I failed.
Right.
Don't mistake that for me, fluffing this up.
Yeah.
And saying, hey guys,
I'm the same, man. I came here to kill an elk.
I came here to kill an elk and I didn't. So I'm not saying that I came that I'm accepting the failure as some sort of consolation prize. I'm not. It pisses me off extremely. I'll be thinking about it every night until I actually get one of these things on the ground. But there is a parallel to that I also have to take parts of this failure and apply to the craft I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
And that both those things could be true at the same time.
This is just one hunt and a bigger puzzle. And that puzzle will come to completion at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
I know it is for me. I mean, and I'm still trying to figure out how big that puzzle is. I thought, well, Colorado.
How many pieces? Yeah.
Colorado over the counter last year. We almost killed an elk. Actually could have, but passed it. Didn't know it was legal. Maybe I already told that story. And then I thought, well, okay, well then here's this piece. We'll go to Montana. And I really thought we'd kill an elk. And the hunt's not over. You're right. We've still got some time, but it's just part of the puzzle, and you've got to value that journey.
Yeah, and so the end of our journey is probably gonna be. We should probably sit here. We're sitting by a creek. There's water. We know there's an elk probably 600 yards up in this timber bedded with his cows, and I really hope he gets thirsty soon.
Yeah,
I really hope he's sitting up there.
I wish
going,
we could cross that creek, but we can't.
I wish he's up there going. God, I feel parched. Could really use a beverage. Maybe I'll just jaunt down over the hill.
Like crack a bottle open.
Maybe I'll just jaunt down over that hill and take a little sippy sip. And then next thing you know, Clay Newcomb sneaks up and gives him one. Anyhow, well, man, it's been fun. It's been a fun week. I think hunting with you is we can have these conversations. We can really learn some things from each other and are willing to kind of go deep on some of these subjects that otherwise probably wouldn't. But laughing, hiking around hard country. As I said before, there's no place I'd rather be in September.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a great time. It's been fun hunting with you, Ben.
Well, we got no Phil today. Phil is on my wait. Oh, never mind. I was looking at my bow. I thought I lost my stabilizer, but I see I was looking at the wrong thing. It's been a long week, trust me. Anyhow, we have no Phil today. He's back in Bozeman, probably comfortable. He's probably playing video games or something. So, hi, Phil. You'll have to listen to this to edit it, but hi, Phil. And in terms of what we got coming up and what we hope to achieve on the show here, we will play you the Paul Bashir interview. That I can promise you. We talked about that last week and the prior week. We did interview Paul Bashir, one of the co-founders of a prominent animal rights group called Anonymous for the Voiceless. It was a very interesting, compelling, maybe maddening, maybe inspiring. Who knows? It'll be up to you for that. I had hoped to get Clay's reaction to that in a podcast as well, but we just don't have the audio right, and we're waiting on a password to get the audio from Zoom, our friends at Zoom. So if anybody listens to this who works at Zoom, hit me up. We need your help. So we will exhume that audio, and we will get that to you at some point as soon as we are confident that that audio is going to be good enough for you to enjoy that interview. But next week, the return of Ask the Eagle, Clay. Ask the Eagle with the great and powerful Yanni Patelis, who actually did kill an elk, his first elk. This might make you feel better. Guess who just killed their first elk with archery tackle?
Oh, was that his first archery elk?
Yeah. Yannis Patelis.
Yeah.
So if it makes you feel, probably makes you feel a little bit better that, that guy's he's a crack elk caller. He was a guide and
Yeah.
Just killed his first elk with archery tackle in Colorado. So we'll talk to him about that. We'll take your questions into the Ask the Eagle.
Has that been going on for a few weeks, Ben? The Ask the Eagle?
Yeah, this will be our second installment of
Okay.
Ask the Eagle. We've adopted Yanni over here at THC, and we're going to keep having him answer your questions live on the air from the studio. Hopefully I'll get a shower before he's locked in there with me. But we'll also have the great and powerful Fred Eichler coming up to talk guiding, talk elk hunting, talk antelope, talk mule deer, talk everything Eichler. And we'll keep it on the Hunting Collective. So we'll see you next week. Say bye, Clay.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
Too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls. I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.